And Susan.
Yeah, that was good.
Okay, you guys are live.
We are on.
Hey, Steve.
Yeah, why not her? Did you make a batch? And I just got it today, otherwise I hated to say.
That's when you're talking about.
Yep, yep. Yes.
Can you come today or is he? He should be, right? Vacation? No.
You didn't say that, did you?
No, I thought he was gonna be here.
He is.
From like, he was, yeah, he was. Ours is his fault.
Good, I wasn't thinking. Okay, that's your, that is a.
Alright.
Yes. Oh, this is second. Steve said she'll be there on Saturday or something.
I did.
Good.
Benson Bridge. When it's like that, should be red.
H.
With the red. Sorry for the wait, guys. When I get kind of all the time. 5 o'clock seems difficult sometimes.
What was your page to on that?
It is a decision the council had made previously for the months of summer.
For the summer months, so that we can all get home and enjoy our evenings mostly. A little bit sooner than 10 o'clock, like we have to during the school year.
What?
You see that?
It's a single page.
Yeah, I have one too.
Sad.
There it is. All right, I'll give it a look.
I'm all for snacks. Or spring snacks. I'm all for it.
Farmer's market sure was nice yesterday.
Thank you.
That was a great day.
It was a good one. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
How many vendors were there? Are you serious?
So they were there.
Lauren, how many vendors showed up
We
yesterday?
had 81.
That is amazing.
Yeah, it was cool. The whole law enforcement thing was cool. They, unfortunately, they had to leave within about 20 minutes of the start of it for the call and Colo, but
They were there when we were there too.
state patrol was there
Yeah.
as long as they could be, and he's like, okay, I gotta go. So
Yeah.
it was still fun.
It was good. I've heard nothing.
We posted, they can jump in, go ahead and proceed.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Call to order. Roll call. Steve?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Megan?
Yep.
Doug?
Yes.
Ken? Not here. Approval of the previous agenda.
I recommend we move 7H up. Craig here respected his time
To after citizens forum.
after citizens forum, please.
I have a quick question. were you needing me here for tax abatement or annexations or any of the other discussion items? If so, I'm happy to stay. So,
Doesn't hurt my feelings.
okay, I'm happy to
right.
stay on the agenda. Thank you.
Hearing no second,
Second, moving each to the active citizens. Was there anything else?
That's what
I was looking.
I'm here for old suffers, if you guys can sort like everything together. I'm just here if you have questions about.
for the fireworks permit.
The fireworks,
that
the
one.
alcohol,
So we can move 7F also to citizen, after citizen forum.
And the alcohol permit is on the consent, so
yeah, it's, I've been, for here yet.
unless anybody wants to move it up and discuss it, I just leave it on the consent.
So we're not moving I.
I don't know, the tax abatement.
so he said we can,
Good.
Greg said we need to move 7H. And we would stay for the tax abatement of the other piece, so we figured that's down where it's at.
Shelley, which one are you?
Oh, here for 7A.
7A, yeah.
Sir, can you remind me again, Deb, do you see? Oh, yeah.
So do we want to move that up also?
So we're moving C, F, and H.
Yes.
I was looking for parcel E for you when I couldn't
Right,
find
yeah,
it.
that's,
So I second, was the motion to move C, F, and H.
I believe it was just for H, but
Let that one die.
Okay.
Making the motion.
Hearing no second on the first motion. And the others.
I move that, we move 7C, F, and H up to after number 4.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Issues, concerns? Doug,
yes,
Megan,
Yes.
Lauren,
yes.
Steve.
Yes.
All those will be held up as citizens forum. Now we're on the citizens forum.
Oh, okay. I see Bill Thomas, 64363 Maxwell. You want me to say that?
Oh, just
Oh,
speak out.
okay.
I know
What's
it's
the,
hard for you to do.
I know, it's very difficult. Update on the bathroom in the park. Where are we at and what's going with that? Just curiosity on that.
Like the remodel of it or what?
Well, I know they were gonna, you were changing the number of stalls or something in there. Where are we at and what's?
I was just kind of thinking about that the other day. The city received the grant funding for that particular project through, I believe it was Kathy Smith who wrote that grant, and we received that funding. I was just thinking the other day, where are we on
It's done.
moving forward? Sorry,
It's done.
it's done. Okay.
And there's 2 or 3 stalls in there, or I know at one time there was a question about a handicap stall or something.
I guess I have myself not been in the new remodel, so I can't speak for it.
I went in there.
It was nice.
Was it nice?
It was okay. They, like the sink had been on one corner, they tore out a toilet with the sink over here, so there's only 2 toilets in there now.
Okay.
So that's all I know. I was out for softball.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't remember any handicap discussion.
So,
That's just me.
yeah, I thought at one time that it had been discussion.
Okay.
I'm wondering. Number 2 on my list. I am so tired of hearing fireworks in June, the end of June, all of July. up until 2 nights ago. Des Moines has banned fireworks within the city limits. I don't think it's a bad idea because there are people that are shooting them up into their driveway, into the streets. I found shells, 4 of them, in my yard, which shouldn't be from fireworks. Is there any way that we can ban within the city limits so that, you know, animals, of course, are disturbed by it. I mean, even farm animals don't want them. And somebody with PTSD, that would be horrible to go through. Or a child with autism having to, like what I went through the last 4 weeks, that would be terrible. And I don't think it would be a bad idea to ban it within the city limits.
Just to, I guess you want me to.
I'm sorry?
Oh, yeah, I think Maxwell goes with the state of Iowa, right, which is June 1st through
Right.
July 8th.
Right.
And that would be,
Des Moines does too, but they
Moines
ban
does.
within the city limits.
sure.
And I can see why, if nothing else, it's a safety concern within the city limits with houses as close as they are. And like I said, I found shells in my backyard.
So I want you to think about something here. And that is, what is the difference, other than population, between Des Moines and Maxwell? One difference is they have a police force.
Right,
We have the county sheriff.
right.
And so banning fireworks in Des Moines, they can enforce it. Banning fireworks in Maxwell, we would enforce it the same way that we are currently enforcing any other violation of the law, such as firing fireworks not on your own property, and firing at the wrong time of day, which means, you know, you call the sheriff comes out, and by the time they come out, they're not firing anymore. So
What
I'm not
about
sure
fines?
it's efficient or even practical to ban fireworks in Maxwell. I would say the best thing to do is you write your legislature and have the legislator eliminate fireworks and go back to the way it was.
To pass it on to somebody else rather than a
Well-
fine if somebody reports it. What about fines within the city limits? I mean,
How
It's
is it
ridiculous
going
the
to be
way it is
enforced?
now.
How is it going to be enforced? Even
I'll
if there was
enforce
a fine? No, you won't.
Yes, I will. I'll go around and I'll write down where they're at and they can be fined.
No, it
It's
doesn't
crazy.
work like that.
Yeah, it
It
doesn't,
could,
it doesn't, not in the small residential rural community. It's not practical. We
but
don't
it's
have a lot of
so
enforcement.
wrong.
You have to be a police officer in order to stop somebody from doing something illegal
I can
and
stop
to
'em.
issue a license and to issue a ticket.
No, but I can turn it into the city.
There's no,
And-
There's nothing
there's
we
nothing
can
we
do.
can
No violation of city ordinance.
There's no violation.
If we had an
If we
ordinance
had an
written
ordinance.
that prevented it, then, and if there were fines, in theory, we could. In practice, there'd be no way to do it.
Well,
I know.
it'd be your word against their word, and then if they came and said, no, we weren't doing
I'll
it,
bring
then
the
what would
shells
we?
in from my yard, you can see what I
We could
have.
get shells from anywhere. Maybe you
It's
let off
Sort of
fireworks.
like dog attacks.
Yeah,
You know, did it happen or didn't it happen? He said, she said.
There was complaints on the Facebook page. It's a good spot to throw this in. There were complaints on the City of Maxwell Facebook page and in the messages, requesting that we shorten the time frame, or we allow it for 2 days instead of all of June or the rest of July.
Yeah, because isn't it like in December, there's
It's just like a week, isn't it?
Yeah,
Okay,
because
I
right
didn't
around the
realize
New
you
Year.
couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And
I
that's
just figured
kind of
the New Year.
That was like a week, that's not that bad.
But you're running the same issue. You shrink it down, it's still important.
I can enforce it.
I get it.
Well, and we've had years past that we didn't have
Right.
fireworks allowed. And it did not stop anybody from firing fireworks.
Okay.
They still did. In fact, I felt like this year was better than years previous.
Oh,
2 years ago, they were till 5 o'clock in the morning up by my house. And just one right after another.
well,
So I feel like we are getting better the more we let them have a little bit of leniency.
But I do think that'd be a good idea to limit it to the week, 3 days before and 3 days after or something like that. That way, it's not an ongoing thing from the 1st of June until the end of July or August.
The only way it's gonna get enforced is if you call the sheriff deputy comes down and they see it happening while they're here. That's
That's
the only
fine.
way it would be enforced.
That's fine, but if it were shortened and an ordinance limiting that week of the holiday, it would be easier to enforce.
They're still gonna have to see them, though, they're gonna have to get here while they're still doing something.
I can tell you, it's not likely the sheriff's office is gonna show up.
But what about the rest of the residents? I'm not saying the person that's doing it, but it would be better for the residents in this community to shorten it to that week, so that we don't have to listen to it for 2 months on.
Deb?
The city of Madrid has banned fireworks within it, and they have a fire,
It's-
sheriff's office.
Right.
They're still firing them off
But
all the time.
if it were shortened, and if there were an ordinance for that, it would be easier for the residents in this community.
But it's
And not
banned in Madrid.
Okay, that's fair.
That's Madrid, this is
But
Maxwell.
they have a,
That's fine,
Please.
that's their problem, not ours.
I'm just saying that even though you guys are wanting to do this, we have no way to enforce it because we have the county where Madrid has the way to enforce it, and they still can't enforce it.
But that's their problem, Deb. What I'm saying is in Maxwell, there would be people who would not do anything outside of what the ordinance is if they knew what it was.
I don't believe that.
Well, one
I do.
way to find out would be to write up, an ordinance, amendment and hold public hearings. You got to, have a reading 3 times, see who shows up, advertise it on Facebook, and if the majority of the people in Maxwell agree with, Ms. Philpott, then, it would be in our interest to, adopt the ordinance. If they don't agree, then we would not adopt it. And that's the whole thing about public hearings.
I think there would be some
I do
agreement to
think
that. I really
they
do
would.
think that. I do.
Agrees to what?
Either shortening it or banning it altogether.
Will it
Let,
work?
let the
Sure,
people
will it
show up.
Right, will it work? I don't think so. But if that's what the route we need to take, then yeah, let's do it.
I think there would be people who would comply with an ordinance if they knew what it was. And I think shortening it would be the best thing for the residents, not just me, but all of the residents who may have problems with all the noise.
So you bring up a good point, if they know about it.
Yeah, if they
You know
know
how
about
many, you know
it,
how many ordinances we have?
that people aren't aware of, yes.
We have an ordinance in this town, you can't walk on the right-hand side of the street.
People walk on the right-hand side of the street.
We have
There's an ordinance that says
we have
you
an
can-
ordinance that says you can't do it because it's in state law, not because we think it's a good idea.
Right.
But it's,
But there,
a lot of our ordinances are adopted because.
you can put
there's
those
a state
ordinances
law.
in, and it doesn't mean anything's gonna happen.
No, but if you can let people know, I really do, feel there are a lot of good people in this community. That's why I'm still here, sorry to say, guys. I could have moved. After Don died, I could have moved anywhere. But I chose to stay in Maxwell because there are a lot of good people in Maxwell. And I enjoy living here and I want to continue living here. And I think there are a lot of good people who would comply if they were aware of an ordinance giving that for a period of time.
All right. I think the council's heard that one. You have more?
Okay, yeah, one more. There was something about stopping the newsletter going out. Is there any way that that can be posted on the web page so that the people who do read it and enjoy reading it would have that opportunity?
We haven't done anything. We haven't done anything.
That's
Well, that's what I'm
Phil was
saying.
saying. She saw
It was
that we aren't
something
gonna be doing it, and she's suggesting that we do a newsletter, but instead of sending out a water bill, posting it on the web.
That's what we were going to do,
Okay.
but then we haven't done it.
See, you're way ahead of us.
I believe it's further down in our list, discuss. And it was,
No, it's in your city clerk.
Okay.
So we heard the suggestion.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for the invite at the top of the page. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Anybody else for citizens forum? Hearing no other, we'll close citizens forum. Then we'll move on to section 7C, which is discussion and action to approve resolution for proposing to vacate property in Maxwell, setting time for hearing and prescribing notice thereof. Give me a second here, I'll find it. Whereas the property herein described is owned by the city of Maxwell, the city of Maxwell feels it's in the best interest of said city and the citizens thereof to vacate and dispose of said property. The property is not used for the city, is not used by the city for the use of public, and therefore maintenance and expense is no longer justified, and the proposed vacation will not prevent any owners of the property abutting on the street or alley reasonable access to their property. And the city council intends to convey the property to the adjacent property owner, reserving any easements of record and use for public utilities. And prior to vacation and disposal of said property, it is necessary that a hearing be held on the proposal to vacate a street, alley, and dispose of said property. The city council of the city of Maxwell as follows: that the real estate described as parcel E of the part of the abandoned railroad right-of-way in the southwest quarter of the northwest quarter, the northwest quarter of the southwest quarter of section 27, township 82, north range 22, west of the 5th PM, town of Maxwell, Story County, as shown on the plat survey filed in the office of the recorder of Story County on August 16, 96, and certificates and field notebooks 14, page 48, locally known as 210 Railway Avenue. Is hereby proposed to be vacating, reserving to the city all utility easements of record or in its use, and that the city council of the city of Maxwell further proposed to convey said property by deed without warranty and without abstract to Sean Carlin, a single person. Consideration therefore is $1,000. That consideration of the proposal of the city to vacate said property and dispose thereof as herein above provided shall come on for hearing before the city council in the city council chambers in the city hall in Maxwell, Iowa on the 7th day of August 2023 at 5 p.m. The city clerk is hereby directed to cause notice of this resolution at the time and place of hearing on the proposal set forth herein be published one time in the Tri-County Times, the newspaper published at least once weekly, and having a general circulation in the city of Maxwell. Said publication is not to be less than 4 or more than 20 days before the date of the hearing.
Move approval of the resolution.
Second.
All right, hearing the second
Discussion.
discussion.
The reason that the survey is dated August 16th of 1996 is because the city council acted on this very item at that date, or shortly after that date, when the owner at that time requested that this property be sold, and we agreed. We held the public hearings, we went through everything, we issued a deed, and the previous owner never recorded the deed. So it stays in the city's name until the deed's recorded. Now that owner's long gone. Now we have a new owner who would like to have the property. I think it's a great idea to dispose of it because you look at the map, some of the improvements on that property extend within that parcel. So my only concern is that this owner record the deed once the city issues it, and that we issued other deeds, people have recorded it, and then they have not combined the parcel with their other parcel. And in one case, the person died, and it's just kind of sitting in limbo out there. The rest of the property sold, but that other little parcel didn't sell because it was never combined with their primary parcel. So not only record the deed, but I would encourage that it be combined with the parcel in front of it. So that's my comment and concern. I certainly think it's a great idea. I did back in '96 when I voted on it at that time.
Is this the 0.18 acres behind your property?
So I've talked to the Sort of county assessor, and he's looking for it, when it comes through, she just marked it at the time.
Yeah.
So he's gonna do that ahead of time. And the one thing I would ask is if there's any sort of waiver to put a public announcement paper because of the situation with the building being on the other property. If that happens, then I have to back on the person who sold it to me, it's gonna be a legal case, so I'm asking it as a, if it's not required, it's a kind of unusual circumstance, just because of the building on there, that if you wait, you just get through. So, it's.
By state law, we can't, we've got to go through the whole process. I don't anticipate there being any problem. It was approved, 17 years ago?
It was approved between us.
Huh?
It's been approved again since then. This is the fourth time it's been sold.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
So I'm not sure.
Somebody else.
So I, from the city's perspective, we've got to follow state laws here. You can perfect title. Once you've perfected title, then you just ask the assessor to combine the two, they'd be happy to do it, because it's one less parcel.
Yeah,
they've
it's
got to
already
keep track of.
before, so he's wearing.
Yeah. And then your property value goes up and everybody's happy.
Then how many hearings are required of this hearing? Am I looking at that wrong? Is there another hearing after this one?
Yeah.
Okay,
We have-
that is what we
yeah.
have to.
All this resolution does is set the public hearing. And at the public hearing, we are announcing that we are disposing of property. Anybody can speak at it, nobody has spoken to any of the others. And, so I don't anticipate anyone will speak against it. Even if they do, the council decides what they want to do, and then they will pass another resolution which actually transfers the property. Right, Deb? We don't do it very often, but we've done it a lot of times on this.
I was trying just today was the day, so. Just concerned about.
Yeah, all this, we have to do it after public hearing. This sets the public hearing.
How long does it have to be before a public hearing?
The publication,
Yeah.
between 4 and 20 days.
You have to have enough time
It
to
has to
publish
be
the
in the paper.
papers.
So in other words, it could be posted the end of this week and next week.
Well, the hearing is going to be on, what did it say?
August
August
7th.
7th.
August 7th, so
Okay.
it has to be in the paper between 4 and 20 days
Yeah.
prior to that. So we'll send it to the paper and,
Okay, so it couldn't be instant.
Yeah. unless we hold a special meeting to, dispose of it.
Hearing no other discussion. Last call for discussion. Move
If
to a
we-
vote.
I'm sorry, Bill.
Vote
If
twice.
we were to hold a special meeting, does that help you?
It's getting late enough in the year, I started this way back. I just.
Oh, as far as building,
Yes,
okay,
so now that it's getting in the fall, I want to get close in by a certain time.
sure.
It's just getting going now, it's probably too.
Well, after the public, if I remember correctly, immediately after the public hearing, we can approve a resolution that does the transfer, and the attorney will write up the deed, so within a couple of weeks after that, we'll all be done. Is that the way you remember it, Deb?
That's the way he just told me.
Huh?
That's the way he just told me.
Ah. Gotcha, I read his mind.
All right, no further discussion. Put it up for a vote. Nate,
Yes,
Lauren,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Doug.
Yes.
Motion carries. Moving on to 7F. Discussion and action on the permit for fireworks during Old Settlers. Do we have the permit?
we've got the insurance. I don't, we've never had it.
Don't have a writing permit. Well, I guess in that case, I'll read our ordinance on it. Display fireworks is unlawful for any person to explode or display fireworks, provided the city council may, upon application in writing, grant a permit for the display of fireworks by municipalities, fair associations, amusement parks, and other organizations or groups of individuals approved by the city The display fireworks will be handled by a competent operator, but no such permit shall be required for the display of display fireworks at the Iowa State Fairgrounds by the Iowa State Fair Board, at incorporated county fairs, or district fairs receiving state aid. No permit shall be granted herein unless the operator or sponsoring organization has filed with the city evidence of insurance in the following amounts: $250,000 personal injury, $50,000 property damage, $1 million for total exposure.
Move approval of a permit for fireworks at Old Settlers.
Second.
Discussion?
One of the requirements for insurance and also for permitting is that fireworks be lit off in an area separated from crowds. And the creek and the trees certainly do that, but last year we had a serious problem in that there were people parked in the yardways from the truck roll. And it got to be really confusing getting people out of there, and it ran a risk of voiding the insurance. The city had agreed ahead of time to lock it so that nobody would park over there. The problem was that people started parking over there when the truck pull started, which was way before we went and put barricade. And so along with this permit, I would move that the yard waste be closed during Old Settlers for the entire time. Put the chain up, keep it closed on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That's going to create a parking problem for the truck pull, but if we're going to approve, from our experience last year, if we're going to be approving the fireworks, we need to take proactive action to make sure that it's safe. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I was
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. You did it well.
So I still move that the yard waste be closed Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, of all Saturdays.
Second.
So we're still in discussion on the first. That's a separate issue, we can discuss that.
Yeah, we have two motions, and we can certainly vote on them separately.
My only thing is, given that our ordinance asks for an application in writing, I would just ask that the Old Settlers Committee provide a written.
Yeah, I thought she did that.
I don't, all we have here is the liability insurance coverage.
And I don't know if Jay Linda said the company or.
Well, if you just do an email to the city clerk stating the date and time that the fireworks is going off, we have proof of insurance.
Okay.
Yep, that's all I'm asking.
Okay, the fireworks be set off with no trees or interference or anything like that, that's state law?
Yeah.
Then why wouldn't that apply to persons setting off the fake fireworks?
Because it only applies to the commercial display, not the private display.
All right, hearing no other discussion on the first, which was the approval of
The application.
the application. We will go for a vote on that. Steve?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Meg?
Yep.
Doug?
Yes.
All right, that motion carries. Now, the second motion which is the closing of the
Yard waste.
yard waste. We haven't had necessarily discussion on that. Does anybody have any additional discussion on that? Concerns?
And we should, at least put it on the sign and, any place else that people get information. So that they know that they can't take yard waste down there.
Hearing no further discussion on that, we'll put that to vote. Lauren,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes,
Doug? Yes. Steve?
Yes,
All right, that motion carries as well. Got all that?
Sure.
Just want to double check. All right, moving on to section 7H. Discussion and action on awarding the owner occupied grant.
thank you, Missy.
Thank you. There it is. Hold on a minute. All right, so a group of us had met and discussed the owner occupied rehabilitation grant. We determined that we have 3 qualifying candidates for this. So looking at Robert Barton of 408 2nd Street for a furnace and sink install. Mary Coate from 121 Woodlawn Avenue for house access needs. And then James Sumke of 421 6th Street for roof repairs. And those would be the award recipients of the grant, of the owner occupied rehabilitation grant. So those funds are dispersed to those individuals after completion of work provided by the city, and the grant comes to the city.
I move approval of, the grant awards.
I'll second.
All right, any discussion on those?
My recollection was that, we had to have at least one person who was in that, lowest tier, of, her greatest tier of need, which I probably do my phrases. And we have at least that one, and then that made us eligible to do the rest of it.
Greg, comment on that, if you would, please.
Yeah, we do meet the criteria with the one applicant listed, as pointed out, Councilmember Guest. One of the things I will point out that we had 9 applicants, 6 were deemed viable, and the 3 were voted on as meeting that criteria and the most needed stretching the dollars. The other 3 will remain on file for a year, and it's fully the intent that we discussed to reapply for funds every year when they come back through the state and Story County Housing Trust. So we want to moving forward, use the matrix that we created to make this a yearly thing.
My recollection from, attending other meetings is that, what we got here was leftover funds because we are not, part of the program where we can, be assured, like Collins, of an annual appropriation.
In the past, that was correct. These were funds that were returned back to Story County Housing Trust because they were unused and they were divvied out for applications. But now that we have a matrix and a program set in place, moving forward, we'll apply for. It is my direction so far is to make sure we apply for funding every year moving forward.
So, as a city, what do we need to do and when to ensure that we will have a viable pool of applicants?
So to make sure we have a viable applicant pool moving forward, all the funds for the current year have already been allocated. But the reason these funds became eligible, like you stated, was that they got returned to the county housing trust and then divvied out again. So moving forward, when it comes up for the yearly announcement from Story County Housing on the funds and the period for filing, that is when the announcement.
About when is that?
usually in the fall, around October, and that is for the following year. So the following year is when the funds became eligible from the state through the organization. And when that is done during that time period, that's when the city of Maxwell will put it out there to the community. If you have a need, these are the criteria, these are the requirements. This is the matrix of the program that we have in place. And then the funds are applied for by the city. So then Maxwell would apply for, in this case, I think they applied for several thousand more dollars than they received. But every year that would start becoming an annual thing.
Okay, so we should be looking at, this fall, getting some notice that there will be funds, that may be available, and then we would be working with you in order to get applications in. Do we, open it up again to, any new applicants?
I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. So you have the 3 that are still viable on the criteria. My recommendation was to check with those 3 that you have on file for a 2-year. If they still have eligible projects, if nothing's changed, then you have 3 current projects you can go right into. And then at the same time, apply for other projects in the community that may have changed within the past year. So you have the 3 current projects that might still be eligible, or additional projects that you wish to apply for as well.
And if none of these 3 are in that lowest tier of need, would we still have that requirement that we would need to meet?
The criteria are stable until the state and the Fed say they're not.
So we would have to, if we don't have somebody who's in, what was it, 130%?
Yeah.
whatever it was, if none of those 3 are in that 130%, then we would not have any eligible for next year.
Under the current guidelines, correct.
Okay.
But what I'm stating very incoherently, I'm sorry, I apologize, but is that the rules are changing every year.
Okay.
So the income levels change. What the levels are this year will adjust next year for inflation and everything else. So
We need to keep an eye on that, and in order to get funds maybe for those 3, we may need to open it up and get somebody who's in that bottom tier who would be eligible to make other people eligible.
very possible. However, I also feel too that once this word comes out, you see these 3 great projects happen, the word will spread. It makes your job easier, to be honest, because the community starts talking about it and they start recognizing that, hey, the annual time's coming up. Let's get our project in for my aunt or my uncle or people in need, and you start building momentum. And after a while, it just becomes second nature that every year the funds come up, every year the application starts, and then you move forward with it.
And if one of these 3 that we selected does not complete it, we could go to 4, 5, or 6 potentially yet this year, if time allows.
If time allows, because you still have the default deadline on allocating these funds.
Right.
So the funds that have to be allocated and spent during the same time frame, that does not change.
Sorry.
How are you?
Standard time rather than.
Amount of time.
He was in Mountain, yeah.
I was in Denver.
Are there any other questions? All right, thank you.
Any other discussion on this? We're currently discussing the owner-occupied rehabilitation rates. We have these 3 individuals who've been selected at this time. The criteria for the grant money, that is our total grant award, and those are the amounts that they will be receiving.
Sounds good.
All right. So, motion and a second, no further discussion, we'll move on to a vote. Steve?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Doug?
Yep.
Ken?
Yeah.
Motion carries. All right. So now,
We don't have the sheriff here, and the departmental reports certainly are important, but I'm not sure they need to be at the front of the meeting. since we don't have a sheriff, could we adjust the agenda moving to departmental reports? Are you gonna stick around for the entire meeting anyway?
I was gonna say, would you be willing to move me up? So I've actually got a yard full of girls who can't out in the house. So if I can get out of here.
No,
I don't know what's happening while I'm
Staying
out
might be
there. I'm a little
good.
concerned.
All of the departmental reports, except for the engineer, down to right before the consent agenda. And that's a motion.
I'll second.
Discussion. Hearing none. Ken?
Yeah.
Megan?
Yeah.
Lauren?
Yeah.
Doug?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Alright. So departmental reports, engineer.
I do appreciate that. Any other time, not an issue, but. All right, well, if only we'd had an extra week before meetings here. So this week, this month, I haven't gotten this stuff too soon, but, got a couple things for you here. Then we'll get the extra week. So, go real bug update on the Baldwin Street. We're in the application process. We've got a couple things on the agenda tonight for, the CDBG application. So that's in process. Still moving ahead with, the environmental studies which are done. We'll get you a copy of those. I haven't seen it yet, but he tells me they are done, so we've got that checked off. High school improvements. I think Doug and I, was it last month that we? Yeah. We looked at a couple of those things. So you need to follow up with one of those items that we saw, but otherwise it was looking a lot better. So it looks like they followed through on a lot of those items. One of the first things I got to you there is the water treatment plant report. So I will get, Debbie, I'll get you an electronic copy of this too if anybody wants to get that. I know paper copies a little bit antiquated, but so I won't go through it in too much depth and detail. But just so you guys have a chance to look at it, we can talk about it next month or any future month. Primarily because if you look at sheet page 6 of that report, there's a proposed schedule for that project. The final compliance limit deadline is August of 2027 for that project. So there is good time to get that one done. There's no hurry on it. However, I wouldn't ignore it. So the schedule is there to it kind of stretches it out. Some of this can be condensed, can be shortened up. There's plenty of time in here for some of these steps, but if we more or less stick close to this, then we'll have plenty of time to get it taken care of. We have submitted this to the DNR as part of their the initial process. They have a deadline to get a facility plan to them by September 1st, so we beat that. So we're a little bit ahead of schedule on that. So they'll have plenty of time to review that, and then there's some progress reports in there that they want periodically. Those aren't a big deal, just a letter saying where we're at. The options we looked at, we discussed a little bit last time. We looked at a couple treatment options. They just don't work cost-wise. So the best option that we feel that we would recommend is a small private pump station that pumps the backwash discharge to the city sewer system, probably at the manhole there at Main and Broad. Yeah. So we're going to be paralleling the force main from Dollar General, but it is what it is. So that's the most cost-effective and simplest solution. It also doesn't require any other permitting or oversight or regulation on the part of the city with the DNR that you would have if you had an on-site treatment.
And you looked at going up over the railroad right of way and getting an easement through Plunkett's property to a sewer line there.
Yeah, that was identified as a possible route. This report doesn't include that one. So that is a possible route. This is a facility plan showing the plan that the city is going to select to move forward. The details of how we get from A to B or A to B prime are set up by this. So we'll have some ability to adjust that. The reason why we showed it the way we did going out to Main Street and up to Broad is that doesn't require any significant easement purchase. It's mostly, we can probably get most of it in the right of way. It's not, it simplifies the process. However, there could be some cost savings if we're able to go up straight north to Short and Broad. I think Short and Broad, there's a manhole there, but that does cross right through the middle of, I think it's Plumbing property, you'll go up there. So if we can get that done and we can see some cost savings because that would shorten the length of the portion we have to do.
We would have that option.
We would have that option, certainly. But it's a little bit presumptuous at this stage to go with that. And plus, if we want to show kind of the worst case cost for planning purposes. And then if we can save some money going that way down the road, fantastic, but at least we're realistic that if we have to go the worst cases.
What's the DNR fine for not completing?
Oh, increasingly worse. So they would, you would have we would, day one of the compliance, I believe, if I remember the numbers right, day one, we would not meet the limits. Sometimes there's a limit that you only violate occasionally, but it's an iron limit that's concerning for us, and that's one of the things we're taking out of the water. So because we take it out, it's part of our waste, and it's high. So you would have a fine immediately day one of non-compliance, and then they would be on your back from then out until it got referred to the attorney's office, attorney general's office, and then the fines are based on a daily violation. So it's similar issue that we had with the wastewater treatment plant. We're just over barrel with the regulations.
Grants to fix this?
So I actually got a follow up on that today. The way we've got this one set up now as a private pump station where we're the only ones on it, the trick of that is not regulated by the DNR. So we would not need a sanitary sewer construction permit. We would not need to go through their process for approval because it's a private connection. The downside of that is that makes us ineligible for SRF, which is one of the common funding sources that we use for water and sewer type improvements. So it simplifies the process for the permitting side of it, but to my knowledge, I'm not aware of funding that would be eligible for it unless we can get something through the water side. We talked to the sanitary sewer side. I don't know about the water side because it's in that gray zone. It's for the water treatment plant, but it's because of its sanitary wastewater discharge.
You follow up on that for me?
We will follow, yes, and I already talked to the engineer to help me on this one, and he's already planning to follow up with the water side because we are in that gray zone. Make sure, but
for me, grant money seems like the way to go.
Well, an SRF would be grant, it would be loan, but it's low interest loan, especially with rates going up, so it's useful. And they potentially may have some grant opportunities on some of the stuff. They've got some of the recent inflation reduction. Yeah, the BIL, the infrastructure, BIL, anyway, the federal money that's coming in. I apologize, I don't know my nomenclatures, but they're looking at some grant programs through the SRF. Right now, they're backfilling and doing some grants on projects that are complete. That may change, I don't know.
And SRF is happens when that money to shift from a 60-40 to a 90-10 in some cases. So that makes it much more easier for you to get guaranteed no interest money for these projects than it is to go through the open market and bonding.
Yeah. And what's our deadline again?
For compliance with the limits, August of, it's in the back page, August of 2027. So 4 years from this fall.
Feels like next week.
It will come fast. That's why I said don't ignore the schedule. It's out there. We've got time to don't ignore it. So we'll keep it on the list of stuff to be thinking about. But yeah. On the flip side, not to make this go any longer, if there was any thought of expanding a pump station in that area for development of some of the lots or the properties down there, it could be made into a public system. However, I believe you still wouldn't be able to, unless you're keeping it speculative, unless you're already serving somebody, and then you have to take over like Dollar General. I'm throwing out a lot of what ifs on this. Chances are we probably would be eligible for that, but we'll keep following up on that. Any questions on the water treatment plant? Feel free to read that. If you have any questions, we can talk about it next month or email me, call me. Go through it. And if they're big questions, we can even get the engineer to help me on it, to come in and answer some of these questions. Also, I handed out to you there the Woodlawn Stormwater Study Scope and Fee. This was pursuant to the project that we had started a little study earlier this year, looking at some stormwater improvements along Woodlawn. And so you requested kind of a scope and fee to do the design through that. I believe this scope and fee is set up for doing the design of the whole thing, although we had talked about doing construction in phases, like maybe doing the lower phase first to stretch out some of the dollars. But yeah, so
Staging of the project can be determined once
Yep.
this is done, and it would not affect the estimate of cost.
Other than just the factoring in inflation, if you staged it several years out, just, yeah. So, and we want to make sure we do that early enough that we could, when we put the plans to put on the shelf, that we've got the right number of stages, if it's 2, 3, hopefully not too many, but yeah. So again, I'm just dropping that on you today, so no action, just for information. Read it, if you have any questions, we can talk about it on future council meetings, or again, phone or email.
I would suggest that it be on our next meeting as to whether or not we're going to proceed with the scope of work. So please consider that for the August meeting.
And if we want to adjust anything on it too, we can adjust services scope. If you want to see something in there, if you want to do something, if you don't want us to do something, you want us to do more. That's the starting point. It's always easier to mark up something that's there. The rest of the stuff are things that I've just got on the list there that as placeholders. Rocky Creek Estates, I think I passed on to them, the developer that, or the engineer planner in our office has been working with the developer in the past. Let them know that the variance had passed. I have not heard if they asked them to proceed any further on that one or not. And then Rolling Hills and the cemetery survey, I don't have anything for you on that. I'm still looking at the survey costs and figure out what we need to do there. I blew through that pretty quick, so apologize, but.
Can I back you up to Baldwin?
Certainly.
Were you going to kind of break down different options if we do this?
Oh, yes, I forgot to mention it, yep. You had asked for some updated costs, and the different thing, so that is, he's been working on that. The Spencer Wigmore, who's been leading that design, is out the month of July with executive out of the country. So I believe it's mostly done. He just wasn't available to polish it, finish it up. So hopefully we'll begin it. Pump that out. So you'll have that for the decision-making process going forward.
And it will also include if we decide not to do X or not to do Y.
That, yeah,
well.
yeah, that's kind of what I mean, essentially we had if you recall, I know you weren't here, but we had kind of a matrix of add-ons, if you will, for the project. So my understanding is he's basically going to update that with the new costs.
Because one thing I heard on the news the other night, and I'll share this just in the what's worth category. Yeah. They had a 12-block area in Des Moines that they were redoing, closing down, kind of what we were talking, the biggest scenario.
Yeah.
And of course, there was concern about fire and safety and police being able to get in and out on that 12-block stretch. And then they came up with the cost of that, and $3 million is what it said, almost $3 million. I thought, wait a minute, we're going to be paying half of that for 3 blocks, and they're getting 12 blocks done for double what we're, the numbers.
Yeah,
I need to see the numbers again.
and
what the difference is.
It's certainly a good check, and we look at scale with a lot of projects as well. We look through things without knowing the details of that project.
Yeah, I'm not
we
sure.
Could get a narrow road, we could have a wider road. We could be worse estimators, they could be worse estimators. So, yeah, but yeah. So
I think on the Des Moines projects, the waterworks pays for any water line.
they do.
That is
Oh, okay,
being done.
so that'd be different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, so
So I mean, 3 million plus $1 million of water.
Yeah.
apples and oranges.
Yeah.
You just look at the road part of it and not the outlet part, then yes, not the outlet, not the, water lines, then 3 blocks versus whatever, yeah, it might be a little bit more
True.
compatible.
But we take 1.5 million and divide it by the number of feet it is.
Yeah.
It's $1,100 a foot.
Yeah. Yep.
Hokey mokey.
Yeah, well, and some of that is the storm outlet that goes
Yeah, there are
beyond
other
the
things,
column.
but-
Yeah. It's not a bad way to,
$3,000 apart.
it's not a bad way to check it, just sometimes the devil's in the details
Understood.
of what goes into it. But
Well, thank you.
ultimately, it'll be the cost will be what the contractor tells us it's gonna cost when we get down to it. Our goal is to get you something that's as realistic, conservative, but realistic, not too far up, but certainly not low, because we don't wanna be surprised of what happens.
And we know what happens a little bit.
Yeah.
Can I add to his, for what it's worth, column? Obviously, this project is expensive. Very, very expensive. Logistically, it takes a lot of planning.
Yep.
What do we need to do as a council to say, and this could be a completely stupid idea, what do we, because to me personally, council or not council, this project, I don't know, we've got to do something, right? The road is terrible, the divot is horrible. It's more of a liability to me, if any project that we have going on than anything, really. That's my personal opinion. What do we as council need to do to think outside the box to get this project done? Are we relying solely on CDBG grant funding? Can we go through and, are we a truck route? Is there a grant route or something outside the box?
Yeah, the challenge of this one has been the funding of it.
Correct.
Because of the expense, and we've been looking for different avenues. The truck route that you mentioned, we're looking for 2 grants on this one. One is the Surface Transportation Block Grant through the Metropolitan Planning Organization, NPO. Des Moines NPO, yeah, thank you. So that is a $240,000 grant. And a lot of the justification for that was because it's a truck route, because it's a high volume route.
Okay.
There's a lot that went into it, but yeah, so, thank you. So that has driven a lot of the schedule, and that, for good or ill, that puts us into the DOT process.
Sure.
And the DOT process is definitely a much cumbersome process when it comes to project bidding. So that's been part of the struggle. The other one is just CDBG. We were anticipating some help from CDBG with the water main relocation, which helps offset some of the paving costs, because the CDBG, some of the pavement costs are eligible for the water main project. And then we did not get that CDBG grant, because that's a competitive process currently. That threw a big wrench in it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a struggle with the wrenches, primarily centered around that funding. But I don't know if there's anything else the council can do other than just, if you want to make a call, forget the water main, we don't want the CDBG, that takes that out of the equation, then we're just going ahead with the roadway. But those are all hard calls to make, because that'll
Sure.
try to capitalize on as much
Correct.
funding
I
assistance.
basically threw that out there for open discussion for the questions and concerns that I've gotten.
Yes.
And I'm sure everyone has
Yeah.
gotten, so that we can touch base on what it is that we are trying to do within the scope of what we can do, right?
Yeah.
Now, the divot, I will take back. I believe, I'll bring that up later. That's approved and we can fix that on our own. But anyway, that was real.
So yeah, and obviously I know you guys are hearing from residents on the condition of the road.
Some of them like it because it's slow traffic.
Oh, yeah, okay, fine.
Except for the divot.
Yeah.
Except for the divot.
Getting funding assistance is a
That's what's slow.
time consuming.
Drag a lot of
Sure.
high
Thank
cruise
you.
vehicles.
Great.
Something you can tell your residents is some of the prep work you've done for these CDBG funds apply to other areas. Your housing needs assessment, your surveys, your income verifications, things like that. That is other things you can tap in the community to offset the costs. So you're not saving money directly on this project, but you're going to be possibly saving money in other areas. And if anyone points to Washington and says there's tons of money flowing out of there, why can't we use some of that? Yes, there's lots of money. but the red tape and stringent requirements usually far outweigh a lot of things people chase. And like someone says, why can't we get an earmark? The congressional district you're in does not have earmarks. You just gotta make sure that people understand what they see on TV. Sometimes it's not actually applicable to Maxwell. But there are other ways the community can tap resources, absolutely.
I believe the council expressed an interest to sit down and review the entire project. And that's what you said this other person will be coming in and doing. There are 3 parts to this project. One is the street, one is the water, and one is the outlet. And I think we need to keep that in mind. Yes, it's a expensive project in total, but if you don't do the water lines, then you're going to be digging up the street at the next failure. And we've seen a couple failures here in town where we had to go out and dig up the street. If we do the street but we don't do the outlet, well, we're going to get shot. Because more water is going to go get down there more quickly. That's one of the advantages of doing the street, is getting rid of, putting in new curb and gutter, getting rid of some of the potholes. But that water has to go someplace, and right now it just sits at that point. So, it's a 3-legged project. You got to keep that in mind. Yes, it's expensive, and I believe the engineers have been turning over every rock they can and trying to get additional funding. But taking another look at the entire project and seeing if there's anything that can be cut is a reasonable request. But I think we need all 3 legs on that stool.
4, preferably, but I agree.
So to close out my time, I guess, we have a couple items on the CDBG hearings. I don't imagine there's gonna be any questions for me on that one. Those are just a requirement that we need for the CDBG application. I saw that there's discussion on TIF districts. I don't know if you need anything input from me on that one. I'm not an expert on TIF districts, so I don't know that I could add much, but, there you go. So, if there's anything else that's coming up that you need me for, I'm not here. Get now, or we can always correspond later. Yeah.
Well, if you're gonna leave, I want to hit this before.
Sure.
That FEMA meeting the other day.
Oh, yes, the floodplain stuff. Yeah.
We have a levy. Yeah, this map.
Yeah.
I was informed that we have a levee about a half mile south of town. Does that hinder our water flow out of town? If so, I know it's a county issue, because we're not city limits.
Yep. I'm gonna have to give you the engineer's answer. It depends. So I had our floodplain experts look at that, and essentially what and I talked with him about it too, to make sure I understood it fully. The FEMA maps, mostly what he was aware of it, and he knows most of what's going on in that kind of world. It's an agricultural levy, so it's not a regulated class levy for Corps of Engineers or for protecting any habitation type property. So it's an agricultural levy. Most likely, and most of the times when they put together the FEMA mapping, they do not consider agricultural levies. They're not built to U.S. Florida standards. The expectation is that if the big flood happens, they're blown out. They're not. So the mapping that you see for the floodplain most likely does not consider those levees acting on the floodplain. So if those levees, and I say this to come around the big circle, if those levees keep water out of an area, it pushes that water to the other parts of the floodplain, which can increase flood elevation of the surrounding area. I say can, because without a detailed study of how there's the Columnus Creek, the Calamus Creek, the Indian Creek, the Rock Creek, there's a lot of different watersheds coming to a point right there, right? So it could impact the tailwater or the headwater, the floodplain elevation in that area, because it likely wasn't considered in the mapping. But without a detailed study, it's hard to tell. From what he's looking at, sometimes she'll say, it probably doesn't. You couldn't tell me on this one, because it's a pretty big area that's protected by that.
Let me give you a practical answer. And I've lived here since, a newbie in town, I've only lived here since, 84. And, it's the 4 floods that I've witnessed. It is not the downstream part that is causing the flood. It is Highway 210 and the restriction of the bridge. We get flooded in Maxwell because water flows over the top of 210 because it can't all get underneath the bridge. Downstream from Highway 210 is always lower elevation, flood elevation than cross street. And that's been true for floods that I've witnessed. So I would say the agricultural levy has absolutely nothing to do with flooding inside Maxwell. It is Highway 210 built up because of the flood and a restriction, which is the bridge that does not allow the free flow of water.
Okay, well, it shocked me it was there, and I thought I'd ask the question.
Yep. Yeah, no, and Steve, you're exactly right. Anecdotally, that's what we see in the floodplain maps. And if you look on floodplain maps, you can kind of see where what is likely the restriction, because you'll see the floodplain comes up to the, say, for example, the Arvila Trail Bridge. It comes up like this on the south side of the trail bridge. On the north side of the trail bridge, it's a big balloon, which means water getting backed up on the other side of the bridge. That's what's controlling that elevation more so than the water downstream. Yeah. Now, that water downstream goes up, it could make the other side go up because there's less that can get under there even then. It's all a matter of head. But yeah, it sounds like what Steve's seeing matches what the maps show, which means that it's the levees are acting on what you're seeing anecdotally. So there's what you're seeing in the field in real life is looking like the maps, which means the maps not taking into account the levee don't change much. Okay. Anything else comes up later in the meeting, feel free to fire a question. Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So just so we're clear, we're moving on to the public hearing.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
But we don't have.
Nope. Same thing.
All right. Discussion action on project review for the city of Maxwell. Project review process.
Sure. So P&Z met at the end of June, and we had proposed asking council to amend the ordinances of Maxwell to include a review process. And at that meeting, we established a subcommittee that we met one time, and these are the notes that came from that meeting. So we had Lauren and Ken, Joe and myself speaking, kind of reviewing and talking about the process. So we gave an example, kind of walked through an example of a site plan that had been submitted, and the question was, who reviews that for the zoning ordinances to ensure that all those zoning ordinances have been looked at and addressed. And then we could apply the same kind of process to rezoning requests that come through. The ultimate goal would be to develop a process that if anybody wants to develop, if anybody has a zoning request, if anyone has a site plan they want to have, then it would be laid out in the ordinances, in the city, Maxwell city ordinances, and to have a worksheet, if you will, a handout that we could provide online for anybody with an application. You go to the city page, and there are 2 forms there now Safeco has one for building permits, and then there's another one. So that's another potential place that we could put some sort of a checklist together for them. And that would be in relationship to a proposed ordinance change. And Lauren and Ken, do you have anything else to add to this, other than what's written in here?
No, I think you did,
Okay,
you've got everything. The only thing I would add is I think this is a good thing to have to put in place to sort of get ahead of the problems that we've had in the past. I don't know if problems is the right word. I think it's more things that have fallen through at the fault of us, at the fault of maybe the project on the other side, the engineers on the other side. This would help Deb a lot in the upfront project piece of it. It's an all-around good thing to have. Residential, commercial, anything. And not just for lot sizes, if it was residential, or all the nitty-gritty of the logistical ideas. Let's put on there, what are your goals for Maxwell? What do you want to see from Maxwell? What can we do for you? To somewhat create a good relationship so the project goes forward as planned and it's good all around for Maxwell.
Give guidelines to plan and zoning.
What's that?
Give guidelines to plan and zoning.
Yes.
To how to go forward.
And I think when you send those things off to either Parks and Open Spaces for recommendation, planning and zoning for recommendation, I think that's what you essentially want to happen. So I have you in mind when we were talking about a process of getting it to come back to council, a strategic plan. So I think that helps that process a little more too.
So Shelley, what as a group you are requesting is a plan review process for each permit?
what the committee's asking is for council to basically say yes or no for the subcommittee to go forward and prepare some documentation to present to you all to identify what the processes are. Or if you have a site plan that comes in, or if you have a zoning request that comes in, or if you have a plat that comes in, so everybody knows. I've sat on the P and Z board, and I get projects presented to me that night with nothing other than a name. I don't know where people live. So it's hard for me to like make a decision that night, and I'm looking at it for the good of the person who has the project in hand. You know, so they know what they need to submit to us. And I don't want them to come back meeting after meeting because we don't have enough information to review it.
So you're asking for clarification on the expectations up front. So the person who's coming to you with their ideas
Right,
already knows what you guys are looking for,
right,
so they can present the entire facts all in one
yes.
shot. And then providing access to that through either the website or through city council, so they can just come and say, hey, here's what I'm looking at. And Deb can hand out a form and say, hey, fill this out.
And it's a great way to have a paper trail. And if somebody has a question on the site plan that has come through, we should be able to come either digital or however we keep it, to be able to reference, it was this, and this is what it was approved, this is what it looked like.
And need it for a long time.
I like it.
Fine. I think it's a great idea. However, we have a permit in front of us tonight for chickens. And the ordinance requires that they provide a site plan that shows where they're gonna put it on their lot and where it is in relation to adjacent houses, because it has to be at least 50 feet away. Now, in the ordinance, it's been in the ordinance for years, and the site plan that we have been given has none of that. It has a little sketch that, gee, the chickens are going to be inside a house, inside a fence, but there's no geographic location for it. So I don't have any idea whether or not they intend to comply with the ordinance. My point is, it's one thing to request detailed site plans, and it's another thing to get them, even if the ordinance is clear that that's what has to be provided. I mean, all it would take is going to the Beacon website, printing out a copy of their lot, scratching where they're going to be putting it, showing the measurements. It would take 10 minutes for anybody with a computer to provide the site plan, and we have squat.
The question is for council, like what kind of information are you comfortable with from people coming to you asking for whatever their project is?
I think it's a great idea to gather all this information together and see where the holes are, and that will then lead to council action to fill the holes. And that's what you're requesting, right?
That could include chickens. You could
Well,
go back and.
there are lots of things in the ordinance that have requirements. That was one example because it's on the agenda tonight. And what I'm hearing Shelley and the group who got together say is that let's gather this information more formally and make sure that we have it. My other question is, if I want to build a garage, do I have to provide costs and how it's going to benefit the community and?
I think that's part of
All
the,
those
I
other
think that's part of the information gathering that what our committee would do. It's like, so is it based on size? You know, it's like, what size of project is it at the end? Is it every garage addition? Perhaps not.
Okay.
But if it's a
That's
square
just
footage.
part of the
issue,
gathering
perhaps.
information and presenting it to the council.
And I should
I think that's a great
preface
idea.
what I was saying. If we were speaking on a bigger spectrum, if businesses were going to town, or someone were to get in the storefront in town, what are your goals as a business? Should have prefaced with that, I'm sorry. No, I don't think me adding on to my garage is going to benefit Maxwell, it's going to benefit me. But, sorry.
But that's all good points, but sub-point, there's the great points I
Sure.
think that we need to put together documentation that anyone who comes in to the city, whether it's whatever project it is, they know the process. They know what's required to be submitted.
And that will lower your burden of issues on your staff as well. Because you'll not be receiving hey, I need this, or where's this?
But when I give out the permits, I say I need this, this, and this. Now,
And what you get is
Nothing.
I don't always get back what I need. But there again, I also am able to go out and say, research. These committees should be able to, they get their packets ahead of time. If they have questions, they should be able to come back to us and say, oh, you didn't get us this. Can you get that? So some of the burden is also on you guys.
earlier
That's a good point.
Earlier tonight, we voted to move forward in disposing of property. And we're disposing of it, we originally agreed to dispose of it in '96 because somebody built their garage on part of city property. Well, you go back to the original plot plan, and it showed that they're going to be building, and it was going to be on their property and not on city property. And so the plan was approved. You know, then found out that no. And you look at the aerial photo and it's obvious that it's not on their property, it's partially on city property by a foot or so. And then that has led to, what now, 17 years worth of confusion. Having good site plans eliminates a lot of problems. So I certainly encourage this group to move forward. Does it take a motion or anything? Or just support the council, so throw it up?
I'm looking for support. If you think it's a great idea, good
I
idea,
think it's a wonderful idea, and if you need any help, I'd be more than willing to sit in, give you the benefit of whatever information I have.
I think one of the other things was safe building, says permits are all good, for what we were talking about. And what else can they do for us? Are we paying for everything we can get out of safe building? Do they act just as the building inspector, or can they come in and do other requirements?
By contract, and Deb can correct me if I'm wrong, by contract, they are also our zoning administrator. So when
So that was one of our
somebody
questions.
comes in with a permit, they should be the one saying, gee, I don't have an adequate site plan. You need to provide better information, you need to state the property line. That's what the zoning administrator does. Makes sure that the zoning ordinance is being followed. It is in their contract. However, my experience with them is that they are doing Slater's zoning ordinance instead of Maxwell's zoning ordinance. They are doing the zoning requirements that they're familiar with, not necessarily ours. So, but you really should pay for it, yes.
I was just gonna say, are there other options besides safe buildings that we could use as a resource?
We could certainly check and see if there's anybody else. As far as building code administration, they do a great job. They are knowledgeable in the code, and they advise us on the codes that we should have so that they can enforce it and keep us up to date. Because zoning is more customized on a city-by-city basis. And maybe we should be trying to become more consistent in our zoning requirements with other communities. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
I agree. The biggest issue with them, with their perspective on their planning, is that they put all of the responsibility back on the homeowner, which then becomes the city's responsibility to hold that homeowner accountable if that homeowner builds outside of the property use lines. They take no responsibility or liability in the building plan based on property lines, survey lines. It is entirely on the homeowner.
what is their contract? How does that work?
I can tell you that I haven't read the contract, but I can tell you I've read a permit recently, and that's what it's told. It is the homeowner's responsibility to know
The property
the
lines?
property line and the setbacks. Which, I mean, we can find the setbacks.
Do they
That's
come
easy
back
enough.
out and review a project?
They come back out and review the project, but they're not gonna pull out a survey. Survey's an extra $1,000 on most projects around town that are 2,000, 3,000. I mean, there's small garages and whatnot.
So make sure you're structurally sound and under code, so they won't
They're not
guarantee
gonna-
that you're foot over the property line.
Right. Same with,
And I
same
don't
with the
know-
fencing permits. I mean, they're not gonna check and make sure that that's on a property line. So.
I don't know of any community that doesn't rely on the property owner for knowing where their property line is. Uh, So, everything I'm familiar with is, you ask the property owner to flag the corners that are impacted by whatever construction is being done. The zoning administrator, in this case, safe building, goes out and measures the distance from the property line to make sure that the setback is correct. Sometimes you step it off because it's obvious. Sometimes it's a measurement, and if it appears to be in the right place, then that's fine. However, that doesn't guarantee that the flags are in the right place. Now, Shelley, you worked in zoning administration.
Mhm.
Am I misrepresenting anything?
No,
Okay.
the biggest challenge Maxwell has is a building enforcer, a building inspector. And obviously the zoning aspect of the project, that's at hand, that should have a review process with it. It has not happened to my understanding. Could have, but I don't know that it has. So if we put an ordinance, if we modify this Maxwell City ordinance to say what the review processes entail, then that's gonna give more teeth to the council to ensure things are done appropriately on the larger scale. Now, the building permit with Big Safe Builds, the garage comes in, they review the garage, they review that process, I think that's good. But if Maxwell has the vision to have more industry, more commercial come into play, we wanna make it as user friendly as possible, so they get the process, so everyone knows what the process is.
Notifications on rules and regulations.
So that's what is on the table tonight, to see if you guys would like us to continue with that.
But to me, that's key, because the easier it is, the less burdensome it is on the person trying to build. It makes it more inviting for them to come in. Creates different opportunities that might not be there otherwise.
So right now, we have, Lauren has said yes to be on the committee, Ken has said yes to be on the committee, and Joe has said, and then I have said yes. And that's another thing, are you guys good with that committee? I appreciate Steve wanting to jump in, because you have great knowledge based on that as well. But the concern is we don't want to have a quorum at the committee. So if you're good with what we have, we'll continue forward. If not, please.
Yeah, I'd be more happy to advise from a distance.
Okay, okay.
I don't have to attend the meeting. I think you guys are headed in the right direction, and from what you said tonight, I fully support you guys moving forward.
I don't see as this needs any formal action. This is just something the planning and zoning committee can put together.
Great.
I think you have the support of the current council as well as the mayor to make the process happen.
And that's key right there, the current council, get it done before the end of December.
One final thing, Ken, August 2nd, does that work for you?
Yeah.
And August, Lauren, does August 2nd work for you?
Yeah.
Okay,
August,
Joe said yes to either one, so, okay,
sorry about that.
no worries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shelley.
All right, on to discussion and action on permit for 405 Fifth Street. Looks like Chris Robinette is requesting 4 pins, excuse me, 6. Still reading the 405. Waste will be hauled away and used as fertilizer at a separate location. And got a 7-foot tall dog kennel fence. Looks to be 10 foot across, 20 foot deep. maybe another 6-foot addition outside.
We have a permit in front of us. Application. And he told us the number. He told us how it's gonna be all the way. And I don't see an attached site plan of the premise showing the dimensions, parcel lines to each building shown. Dimensions of each building, including the proposed coop and fence exercise pen. I see dimensions on the pen and the coop, and I don't see dimensions to any other property line. And it is supposed to be 50 feet from any neighbor's residence. I don't see anything on here which would indicate that I could approve or not, because there's no information. So, you have any other information on this that has been presented to the council?
Did you get any response from the neighbors?
It's gonna be hard for them to respond, they don't know how far away it is.
Well, I can tell you, the west side is Main Street, the south side is 210, and I don't know from north and east how far she is from her neighbors. But west and south, she doesn't have neighbors.
The specific permit is,
Versus the people
as Steve
on
said, requires dimensions and parcel lines for each building. In other words, how far away from the property lines it'll be.
Until we have a complete permit, I can't vote yes.
I think in the discussion that we just had, it would be in our best interest to go back and ask for the correct site plan, go back and do the steps correctly, and move forward as the permit allows.
And it has to be no more than, like I said, going out to the Beacon website and making a print and marking it up.
And like Megan said, on
I mean,
the,
it spells it out.
it does.
So
And southwest,
I'll make a
west and
motion
south
that-
doesn't have anything to worry about.
But north and east are questionable.
North and east are questionable, and I believe east of her is Paul.
Neighbors.
It's Wayward,
Waivers, yep.
and Coral would be this one.
Eyeballing it, I
This is
think,
a huge extra lot.
yes.
We have a
Yes.
motion to do
Well, two different.
to defer,
that.
I'll change that. Make the motion to defer this until properly done by the front page of the application.
Discussion. Okay, good.
I think we discussed it today.
Yeah,
Lauren,
yes.
Megan.
Yep.
Doug,
Yes.
Ken,
Yeah,
and Steve.
Yes.
Moving on. Discussion and action on a resolution setting the time and place of a public hearing on the approval of the community development and housing needs assessment for the city of Maxwell. A resolution setting the time and place of a public hearing on the approval of community development and housing needs assessment for the city of Maxwell. City of Maxwell. The City Council of the City of Maxwell desires to apply for community development block grant funding from the Iowa Economic Development Authority. Whereas the city needs to develop, approve, and submit with CDBG application to community development and housing needs assessment. Whereas the process for approval of the community development and housing needs assessment requires that the city hold a public hearing to allow citizens the opportunity to be heard and provide comments on the development and approval of the community development and housing needs assessment. Now therefore be resolved by the City Council of Maxwell, Iowa, that a public hearing be conducted by the City Council in the council chambers located in City Hall, 107 Main Street, Maxwell, Iowa, on Monday, August 7th at 5 p.m. Further be resolved that the city clerk shall give notice of said public hearing by publication of the notice in Tri-County Times at least once, no less than 4, not more than 20 days before the meeting.
Will we be back in City Hall?
That's what I didn't realize that was in there. I don't know.
That was in the other one too. I think we can modify based off of, that's not where we're currently at.
Temporary.
The public knows where we're at.
Says we're in City
The
Hall.
city council or city hall,
Okay, well, does this place have an address?
111.
Huh?
111.
Like you said, I think it'll be okay.
Yeah.
But if we publish it at 107, is anybody gonna come and lynch us? If we have posted on the door that,
I think it'd be.
please come back here. I don't know, I've been lynched before. Move approval?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Ken,
Yeah.
Doug,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Lauren, Steve,
Yes.
motion passed. All right, discussion and action on a resolution setting the time and place of a public hearing on the submission of this, do I am reading the same thing? No.
No.
CBDG application for the city of Maxwell. The city council of the city of Maxwell, Iowa desires to apply for community development block grant funding from the Iowa Economic Development Authority. Whereas the city needs to make improvements to the city water distribution system to ensure that residents in the target neighborhood have a reliable and safe supply of water. And whereas the requirements of the CDBG application require the city to hold public hearing to allow citizens the opportunity to be heard and provide comment on the submission of the grant application. Now therefore be resolved by the City Council of Maxwell, Iowa, that a public hearing be conducted by the City Council in the council chambers located at City Hall, 107 Main Street, Maxwell, on Monday, August 7th at 5 p.m. Be it further resolved that the city clerk shall give notice of said public hearing by publication of a notice to the Tri-County Times at least once, not less than 4, not more than 20 days before the meeting.
I think you just read E for the city,
Did I skip one?
one about the,
No, we're okay.
We did
Okay.
D. Now we're on
You
D.
missed me.
oh, I missed
You
it.
missed C,
Yep.
sorry.
Alright.
Or,
Sorry.
you missed F.
One, yeah. It's really confusing.
We're on to G.
Not yet,
Oh, Teresa.
because we haven't moved and seconded and discussed and voted yet.
So this one is for the block grant. Swear it's the same thing.
I move the resolution.
I'll second.
All right, further discussion?
Where? Which, it says, consider submission of an application, will, funding assistance for water distribution system improvements. Which improvements? I know, without putting a little bit more information into the publication, are people going to be expecting improvements that we are not planning?
So,
This is along Baldwin. Is that what this is for?
Greg,
I would urge you not to limit it to a specific project, because if the survey or application is for that specific project, it may disqualify you from using that data or any other resources for anything in the future during the 2 years.
So, the publication will be for improvements, and the public hearing, will be broadly for any improvements
As it relates to water.
as it relates to the water system. It's just that our initial project is going to be limited.
I would suggest that wording because of the fact being that you might apply for another CDBG or use the data from your reviews or surveys or anything else during that next 2 years when they're valid. I would keep it that language intact.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm done discussing.
Further? Hearing none? Megan?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Ken?
Yeah,
Steve?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Motion passes. All right. Discussion and action on the LP contract. Current contract begins September 1st, 23, ends March 31st, 2024. Contract gallons of 2,200. Prepay is $1.49.9. Total due $33.76.98. 15 cents down. 15 cent down. Price per gallon is $1.54.9. Total due is $3.30. Your budget options.
Yeah, don't we normally do the prepay? Because we save money for the community. Move approval of the contract with prepay.
second.
Discussion.
And check.
My question would be is, was this in our budget and did we allocate for it
Yes, for the year, yes.
for the amount shown?
I believe it was maybe it was not an exact amount shown, but it was.
We estimate utilities.
Pardon?
I said we always estimate utilities.
Yeah.
There's always an estimation, but
It's an estimate,
but if we allocated $500 and
this contract is for, the fiscal year that we are in now,
24.
right? Which we estimated, 5 months ago. And when we do the estimate, we add an inflation factor. So is there enough? I don't know, but, if there isn't, then we will, use other existing funds.
we have the revenue report. Should that be in there? Or rough idea?
We keep the two budget reports.
Which section?
It doesn't have, it's not broke down by utilities and.
Is this all for the sewer treatment plant that we're,
No,
okay?
this will be fire, sewer, and water. A good share of it comes to fire.
Well, anything else? Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Steve?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Ken?
Yeah,
Motion carried. All right, we are on to discussion and action on tax abatement continuation.
It has expired.
Yes.
June 30th.
And in order if we want to have tax abatement, we have to do another urban renewal or urban revitalization. I get urban renewal plan, and you have excerpts of the plan here. So is the question that is in front of us tonight, whether or not we're going to do another plan and have tax abatement? Is that what we're doing? Because we can't just say, yeah, let's redo, because it's gonna take public hearings and redoing the plan and, yeah, holding public hearings and then adopting it and sending it up to the recorder. Yeah.
Please do. Tax abatements are almost like the meat and potatoes of economic development. Any residential, any commercial, any development you have, the first question is, do you have an urban renewal, urban revitalization? Do you have abatements? Do you have TIF? Those are the basic things tools that you have as a community for economic development.
Our last one was 100% for 5 years. Is that the standard now?
I've seen them anywhere from up to 5 years from 3. So some of them have a sliding scale on the abatements. 5 is pretty average, to be honest. And
100%?
At 100%, and usually it's one or the other. You know, if someone comes in and wants a grant or help with infrastructure, usually abatement is something they get, but it's not all or nothing. It's one or the other.
I know of one person that's lived in Maxwell for 15 years, built a new house, got 100% for 5 years, built another new house, got tax abatement for another 5, and is now at the last house at 5, and they're now out of Maxwell. I think it needs to be a graduated amount for a small county, not a big city. But if you go, 100, 80, 60, 40, 20, they're still getting the tax abatement.
Well, unfortunately, we're not there yet. We're just determining whether or not we're going to continue tax abatement. That'll be down in the discussion piece. No, we're discussing whether or not we're going to continue tax abatement, not the process behind it. Thank you.
Yeah, how many, we've had this for 5 years now. And just off the top of your head, how many, over a 5-year period have we, had? Huh?
5.
So maybe 5. We've accounted for 2 of them. 3 of them.
You said 3 houses, right?
Yeah, 3 houses
Okay.
in 15 years.
4 or 5.
So
When we adopted this originally, it was at the urging of Scott Oaks, because of his plans for development. And we're 5 years down the trail. I understand what you're saying, that, gee, that's one of the first things they ask for, but that doesn't guarantee anything. They just say, gee, you have tax abatement, and I think we should be answering yes. I think we should be looking at a graduated scale rather than what we did for Scott, being consistent with the communities in the area. We don't need to out-compete them. Just, yes, we have tax abatement and this is the percentage.
I agree too. For me, the tax abatement is an opportunity. It's a long-term vision. It's not a tax that we're going to get right now, but the opportunity still presents itself for a house to come in and build it. The house is going to be there for 75 years. So what we give up 5 years of that, whether it's over a 10-year scale, that's one of the things I've seen several times where they do it. You get the tax abatement every other year for 10 years. You know, so those opportunities are there, so that helps keep people in. So, I agree this should be in place here.
So then the question comes up, if we decide to move forward with it, who's going to guide us through the process?
As far as,
Writing the plan, making sure we have the right meetings, and hearings and everything else, is that, your daily work?
I can assist on that, and I've done a couple of them in the past when I was an elected official like yourself. Who did your last one 5 years ago?
I did.
So you wrote it up and then just did the 5-year termination on it?
Yeah.
So I think the first thing we would do is update the language, make sure it's cognizant of what the legislature's done in the past 5 years, since it's no longer grandfathered in. The big question is gonna be, is it a graduated scale over 5 years, 10 years? That's gonna have to be something that can be considered, but yeah, I can do that. I get a copy of the old one,
I'm giving you in Word format too.
Word format, great.
that'd be wonderful. Thank you.
You should, do you have one?
I'll be happy to help you with.
Developed, because
Yeah,
we
if you're
That's
fine.
the-
I have the previous one also.
Yeah, I can't remember how many years it was.
It was 3 years, 60, 40, 20, I think.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking was 3.
3 years, 60, 40, 20.
Yeah, we never had the 100%.
And the code changes, and so they allowed 5 years, and,
Yeah.
there's competition between
Oh, yeah.
communities, and so things become,
And keep in mind too, some of the changes to the property tax was done with legislation this past year. You know, that affected residential payments, that affected your tip ability with the 540 levy on the school side. So those are things that are taken into account too. So someone that may have got 100% 5 years ago is not gonna have the same amount, even with the new one. Even if you gave them 100%, it still won't be the same, because the percentage is different.
gotta love the legislature.
I move we work on approving and putting in place a new tax abatement.
A second.
Motion and a second, further discussion.
I will send you what I have.
Thank you, sir.
All right, hearing none. Megan,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Ken?
Yeah.
Doug?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next piece, discussion on annexation of property. Annexing the north half of the Travis property.
I'm sorry, sir, is
I'm sorry,
I still on there?
I'm sorry.
Action item I, tax abatement. And then we also had the annexation of property 2 in TIF districts.
So
Yeah.
we just hit the tax abated piece.
Yeah, if I would, I'd like to have the TIF discussion first, because that impacts your annexation discussion.
Gotcha. We will move, oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Request
I
of
move
council.
that, we do the, TIF discussion prior to the annexation of property.
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none. Steve,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
Megan?
Yep.
Ken?
Yeah.
Doug?
Yes.
Sorry. All right, so we're going to move to the discussion on the TIF districts.
Is that the note from the certified public accountant?
No, that's the other.
Oh, that's the audit. So we don't have anything in the packet about TIF. You're on.
And that is why I wanted to have the TIF discussion before annexation. What is that pertaining to as TIF? Is it renewing TIF? Is it having TIF? Is it looking into TIF? Again, I go back to what I just mentioned, the state legislature changing some of the things. The landscape's vastly different than it was 6 months ago, and they're already saying, look out for 2024.
That's Doug. He's the one that wanted to run it.
Who?
Doug.
Yeah. Well, in speaking with the guy who bought the Travis property, he was very insistent that we consider a TIF district on that property, which goes with the annexation because it's that same property we're looking at.
Got it.
So that's where that was and is.
Okay, so the target is to set up a tipping district for a new piece of development property,
Correct.
residential or commercial?
Residential.
Okay. Has there been any communication at all on the annexation process, or is this the first night?
Thank you.
First night, okay. If it is okay with mayor and council, I would ask that you forego talking about TIF until the next council meeting. And the reason I ask is just that once you decide on the annexation, that will clear it up on that process regarding TIF. Because your city boundaries are gonna dictate your TIFing requirements and everything else, so I don't wanna start one process and go another process.
Can you help me understand that a little better?
So tipping is allowed in two different factors, within your city limits and then within a certain 2-mile radius of your rural. So you can get a rural tip outside your city boundaries, but it's only at the rural levy, not your city levy. So the processes are supposed to be designed where you annex, you have set city boundaries, you set up your tip districts. Then you develop the projects. You can't do one, jump over and do another process in the middle of that process. It has to be a certain way to do it through your bonding attorney, your whoever your accountant is, and things like that.
So complete the annexation, which we can't do tonight.
Right.
We complete the annexation, and once it's completed, then we can go through the process of setting up a TIF district.
Correct. Because that sets your baseline.
Because if we did it the other way around, we would not be talking about that external part yet.
Yeah, you couldn't set up TIF first. You couldn't set up TIF first and start the whole process and then annex it.
Okay.
Otherwise, you'd be repeating the whole process of a new
Yeah,
TIF
that's
district.
why we want to get to that outside part.
We don't have a map of Maxwell here. So everybody.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we do.
Right around in there.
Where?
It's right there.
Pick a map.
That whiteboard sitting there that needs turned around. It just needs turned around.
Okay.
It should be the big one. Well, there's that one too.
Yeah, that'll work.
That'll work.
Everybody in this room remembers that the city of Maxwell did not include any of this property. It used to come up, over, back, and up. So that was annexed, and this was all, and this was annexed over here, along with that, at the time, Doc did his development. At the time Doc did his development, we were told we should create a TIF district, which we did prior to annexation. And it included all the vacant property in the city limits at that time. Then Doc came in with his plan and we annexed. And as a consequence, we have a second TIF district, which is called the Owens TIF, which covered his platted area. And that currently has a $3,000 deficit. And the other TIF district has about $110,000 surplus of cash, and both of those districts have expired. And so we're sitting in a situation where we have two TIF districts, and we don't know what to do with the money. One's in the hole, the other's positive. So what do we do? Now what we're doing in the right order is doing an annexation. And because we do not have a current active TIF district, we would then establish a TIF district, we'll give it a new name, and do whatever
To include
we
everything.
can with the developer and start collecting revenue to offset debt that we are going into. Because you can only collect TIF money if you have a debt. So these two actions are going to create a debt. It's going to increase the boundary of the city, it's going to create a debt, and the TIF will pay a portion of that debt if we proceed. Does that, everybody understands that that's what we're doing?
Where does the debt come in from?
From the improvements, you know, in order to develop, we have, the council worked on something 5 years ago, with a concept that, gee, this may someday develop and, the lots could look like this, you know, some small lots here and some bigger lots up there outside, in the farm grounds. And in order to do that, we had to have about $500,000 pump lift station. And so that would be a city, that would be an investment that, if the developer didn't pay for it, the city would, or the developer would pay for it, and on behalf, front-ended on behalf of the city, and it would become a city debt, which we would then reimburse through TIF funds, which, if he builds houses, would pay for a portion of it. But you can't cope. You can establish a TIF district, and if nothing develops, then there's no revenue. You have to have debt. Street would qualify,
Sewer,
sewer
water.
lines qualified, lift station qualifies, all that would qualify. And what we looked at, when we looked at that development up there, we had some rough numbers from the engineer. And one of those numbers was about $500,000 on a lift station.
So I guess what I would suggest at this point is that you give me some time to dig into this, talk to those couple of council members or the mayor, city staff, and dig into this to find out exactly what's needed on the timeline. And then we can come back and revisit this and figure out a schedule of, okay, this is what our annexation schedule is, this is what our TIF schedule would be. And we set this up the proper way the first time, and then we can figure out your other TIF district issues as well.
I'm getting very out of date, in my knowledge of, processes. I used to deal with annexations a lot in the 80s and the 70s. And so I don't know what the process is for voluntary annexation today. I did not check the code before I came. We have the property owner who would like to be in the city, and he would like to develop, and he would like to do it if we had a TIF district. And so we have a lot of likes. How do we get this started? What is the first step in a voluntary annexation?
First step with the voluntary annexation would be, I need the developer to find out how much acreage he wants to do, what is his timeline for it, what is his future intent for the property itself. Then we would talk to your legal counsel and set up a timeline against council meeting to give you a proper breakdown of the voluntary annexation. It has to go through the state city board as well.
City development board, so this.
And then what we would do is that at that time frame, I would also check with your bonding council and your TIF districts and work with Deb and figure out exactly what the timeline is on fixing that. Because what I would like to do is do this all at once, instead of you having 3 set pieces and being built 3 separate times. If we're gonna do this, let's do it all at once and get it digested and done.
Since bond council's involved, is there any, that's going to be a cost to the city? Our attorney is a cost to the city. And are there any filing fees with the city development board?
There is very minimal fees, all things considered. But here's the thing is, to your point, you know, there are fees included, but if we don't do it all at once, they're gonna be billed separately over multiple accounts. And, you know, and then you're still incurring the cost only 3 separate times.
So what's really in front of us tonight is approval by the council for you to proceed on our behalf.
And start talking to your developer and your bonding council and city staff and making sure that we get this set on pace for August.
Sounds a hell of a lot better than needed. And excuse my French.
I wish it hadn't sounded that eager to do that. It's fine.
I used to be what I had to do. Like I said, my knowledge is way out of it.
That would be my recommendation. And it might take a special meeting just to do that one thing, but then it's done and cleared your plates on it instead of dragging out over multiple council meetings.
Okay.
While we're at it, do we want to approach the mobile home court, see if they want to be inside the city?
I wouldn't know why not.
We just don't want the Zoom for
I move that we proceed as discussed with a possible annexation and TIF district.
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, vote on. Doug,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Yeah,
Second.
Lauren.
Lauren. Doug, can you provide your contact details?
I'll get it to you, Greg.
Thank you.
Motion.
And Deb included in that.
Steve,
too,
what
right?
was your motion?
I got,
Oh, you got the
I
motion.
just missed the second.
Oh,
And Deb's included in that too, so she's in the survey, right?
Yeah.
thanks, Deb.
Thanks, Deb.
I would do that. Thank you very much.
I know it's both J and K.
All right, discussion and action to authorize mayor to sign contract for annual audit.
I move that the mayor be authorized to sign a contract for the annual audit.
Second.
All right, discussion? Hearing none. Megan,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Ken,
Yeah,
Doug.
Yes.
All right. Motion passes.
We have to have an audit.
This is a company that did the last one. They were really good.
Pardon?
So this is the company that did the last one. They were really good.
What was the approximate cost, do you remember?
Oh,
4,000?
it was, it's gonna be a lot less than this one, because the last one was just a normal audit, this one is a financial audit,
So it'll be more expensive.
because we tipped the magic scale on our dollar amount due to our engineers. Due to the DNR's requirement of a sewage treatment.
All right, discussion? Discussion and action on resolution transferring between funds for expenditures approved for the 23 budget.
Move approval.
You've got a question in there.
Well, I'm gonna have questions later when we get to discussion, so move approval.
Second.
Discussion.
Are all of these transfers going to be accounted to the last fiscal year?
Yes.
So there is no budget impact to the current fiscal year. Great. Good job.
We try once in a while.
These are budgeted transfers, and I recommend that the council approve it.
Second.
We're in discussion.
Yeah.
Let's go out for a drink.
Shall we?
Yes, she would.
Greg, I don't know if you're gonna tolerate us or not. but-
I would go through that motion.
Hearing no further discussion. Doug,
Yes.
Megan.
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
Steve.
Yes. Yeah.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it, Greg. Reach out if you need something.
Will do.
I come back to that.
Give me that info.
Yep.
Motion to, approve a motion to go into closed session according to chapter 21.5 to evaluate the professional competency of the individual whose appointment, hiring, performance, discharge is being considered when necessary, prevent needless and irreparable injury
Yeah.
to the individual's reputation, and that individual requests a closed session.
This has been, this closed session has been reviewed and approved by the attorney.
Uh-huh.
Let me look into it.
A lot of you have gone to, council training courses, and whenever they get to closed session, they always
Yes.
admonish
Shut off everything, but they have-
councils to make sure that the attorney has reviewed and approved the fact that you're going into closed session.
Correct.
And so, has this been reviewed or approved by the attorney?
No.
Huh?
No.
Should we be going into closed session?
New water for all of us.
Huh?
I said it's new waters for both of us.
Dee requested it as part of her performance review,
Oh, okay. So we have,
and I have a signed statement from her.
huh?
And I have a signed statement from her.
Okay, so we have a request, and you want to be here during the closed session,
Yes,
which is your option.
yes, I want to be here.
Okay. Which would mean you can't be here.
So did you
If we
guys,
go into, if we close the session, you have a recorder.
I know the record,
Okay.
which means we have to also close off everything.
Turn off the video, yeah. And the
But-
phone.
As soon as you guys decide, shut off everything.
When we come back out of closed session, are we going to restart the video?
Yes.
Okay, so anybody who's out there watching now will know that we'll be in closed session for a time period, and then we will go back into open session again. Okay? Now, I move, and why we have to be careful is going into closed session makes us all personally liable for any violation that happens during a closed session, not corporately liable. So,
Before we do though, does Sean have anything we need to discuss yet?
I don't know if we can circle back or not, because I was a little confused at the date earlier on the paperwork that says this is supposed to be finalized, possession was supposed to be taking place May 15th. That's why I was super confused today. I thought this was done and over, and I was gonna get the deed and pay. The paperwork on there says if it's, property shall be delivered to buyers on May 15th, 2023, and any adjustments of rent insurance by the seller's possession shall be made as of the state of possession.
this is a deed that was provided by our attorney? Or what
This
piece
is
of
all,
paper are you looking at?
this is the agreement to purchase with my down payment on the 5th of May, stating that if it moved forward, it would close on 15th and I would have possession already. So that's what my confusion was earlier. I don't understand how, it's gonna be 2 months pushing out from here. That puts me into,
Well, a month from now, yeah.
Okay.
Just,
It's a contract, so
Yes,
it's
it
only the
is.
15th, so that's what my confusion is.
which means that you can certainly back out of it, or we can go forward.
Or is there damages for this? 'Cause
I have absolutely no idea. That'll be a question for our attorney.
I'm gonna push it too far, I wanna get it done, but I mean,
Yes. We all want to get it.
if it's possession and we're worried about paperwork, is it two legal things possibly? Can I do things and get a building permit? That done ahead of time, since it was supposed to close on the 15th, and do those things, get it approved and surveyed?
So the way I understand the contract is that when you have a contract signed for a specific date, that would be active to that point. The issue is it's not a documented transaction that has happened or occurred yet. So it hasn't been registered, so it's not technically in your possession at this time. So for liability sake, the city can't have you go in and build or change or move until we get this all sorted out and get the property put into your deed.
Just understanding my confusion, that's all I'm bringing up, you know, because it was a date.
Yeah.
That's why I was like, well, another month, so.
Yeah, I don't know why that date was in there. Just, we wrote it,
Is that the
We
day that you wrote it?
went to the attorney, he wrote all this.
and probably the attorney was assuming that
The council.
we didn't
Similar
have to
to a
go to a
residential
hearing
transfer.
again because we already done it once. But now he's advising us that we have to go to a hearing because it's still in our name.
I thought after the first, meeting about this in April, I believe it was April.
Yeah.
That was supposed to all be done in the background ahead of this possibly, but.
Yeah. Apparently, the attorney has had a change of
I
opinion.
think it was because the other contract was in Dennis Parker's name.
Pardon?
The other contract was in Dennis Arthur's name, and it was a specific person on the other contract. So I think this is why they had to go back through this other. paperwork.
So.
We want to make sure it's legal and it's in your name, and that's our
So
goal.
it still stands as discussed, but again, I just want to clarify, because that's why I'm super confused
Yeah.
here. I should have this concrete work right now.
Yeah.
So, okay. Fair enough.
Thank you. So we still have the option for the approval of a motion to go into closed session.
I move to go into closed session at employee request.
Steve already
Oh, did we? Okay,
moved, I needed a second.
all right, down second.
Discussion.
Sorry.
I wanted you to have the liabilities.
Ken?
Yeah.
Doug?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yeah.
Steve?
Yes.
Motion carries.